외국에서 하게 되면 되게 어디서 하게 되는 건 학술원이라 학술은 학문의 중심지 아니고 학술원이라는 건 되게 중요한 기관에서 해요. 그래서 우리나라에서는 어디서 하는 게 좋겠느냐 해가지고 여러 기관 중에서 우리나라에서 이제 지도 연구 우리가 이제 국립중앙도서관이 지도자료실이 있는 유일한 곳이에요. 도서관 상당히 그리고 이제 국립중앙도서관 하게 되면 우리나라 어떤 학문의 중심지라고 해요. 여기서 하는 게 상당히 상징적인 의미가 커요. 그래가지고 마침 그 국립중앙도서관에서도 이 대회 취지를 알고 기꺼이 승낙을 해가지고 같이 공동주관 형태로 여기서 하게 되는 거예요. 여태까지 우리나라 고지도를 보는 시각이 자꾸 영토적으로 좁게 만지고 진짜 고지도가 가지고 있는 콘텐츠를 아직 충분하게 이해를 못하고 있어요. 대중들이 이번 기회를 통해 가지고 고지도에 대해서 좀 더 폭넓게 사고를 하면서 접근을 하게 되면 고지도가 그때 좀 더 정확하게 보이고 상세하게 보이고 그렇게 고지도에 대한 시각을 좀 더 넓혀주었으면 좋겠다. 이게 우리 고지도 학자들의 바람입니다.
제32차 세계고지도협회 국제 심포지움이 한국에서 개최되는 의의가 대단히 크다고 봅니다. 아시아에서는 두 번째로 개최되는 것이고요. 서양 고지도를 연구하시는 분들 그리고 사랑하시는 분들에게 동양의 고지도는 매우 알려져 있지 않았고 신비로운 존재였습니다. 특히 한국의 지도는 더욱 서양인에게는 생소한 분야입니다. 그런데 한국에서 개최됨으로써 서양 고지도 그리고 지도를 좋아하시는 분, 연구하시는 분들에게 한국의 고지도의 역사와 한국의 고지도의 전통 그리고 위대함을 알리는 아주 좋은 기회가 될 것으로 생각이 됩니다. 그리고 한국인들에게도 서양의 많은 그 지도를 연구하시는 분들이 관심을 가지고 있다는 것을 알려주는 소통의 좋은 기회가 될 것으로 생각합니다.
A little bit of sort of theoretical background. All Confucianism is hierarchical, and Korean Confucianism obviously is no different, but there are a few characteristics of the hierarchical nature of Korean Confucianism that interest us. There's something called the Samgangmorun, which I've translated as the 5 moral principles, the 3 fundamental principles and 5 moral principles of human relations. And these are codified in the Confucian canon. The son must serve the father, the subject must serve the ruler, and the wife must serve the husband, are the 3 fundamental principles. Japan, being a Confucian society, has a similar code, but in Japan 1 and 2 are reversed. The ruler has supremacy over the father. And then the 5 moral principles, once again, we have fidelity between ruler and subject, close bond between father and son, the wife is below the husband, younger are subordinate to older, and trust between friends. What's significant about this is that all but the last, all but this one, are hierarchies. You can see there's an order of top to bottom. Unfortunately for women, they get it twice, right? Here and here. Yeah. And that's still, with us today to a certain extent, although
and of academics. And it is actually an ideal situation. I normally compare it with a stool with 3 legs, like an IMCoS. Academics, collectors, and dealers is what keeps historic cartography in focus all over the world. It is very nice to see that also in the field of my hobby of map collecting, we see the library, there's a map center, we see a lot of activity on it. And if I look around me, I see, especially in this time of October, I see the cover, I see the big buildings, I see the students walk by. I am quite impressed with what you have here in terms of availability of means for the study of maps.
Ladies and gentlemen, I first sincerely welcome all of you who have traveled to Seoul, especially in autumn, known to be the most beautiful season of the year. I think that is why ancient map needs professionals like you who can decipher every code embedded in ancient maps as literature needs critics. I firmly believe that this conference is a great venue where we discuss and share those codes of maps you found out. I think the aim of sharing knowledge and opinion on ancient maps not only lies in enhancing understanding of other regions or worldview of the past, but also seeking the ways to understand each other and co-prosper in the future. You will find some time to enjoy this beautiful season, autumn, and for you. Thank you.
The value of it. A lot of people, because of base of the Asian maps that they didn't present the mathematical field, they try to devalue the maps of Asia, but I don't think so, because like I said before, every map created there is a purpose. In Asian country, it's pretty much true for Korea, Japan, there's for administrative purpose. They're trying to use this. When I worked with the maps in the Library of Congress, I saw a lot of official documents, because how do I know? Because it's wrapped with a yellow satin. That means the color reserved for the emperor. So they wrapped it this like an official report. It's like what I'm doing, annual report. So every time we have 1/3 of our collection devoted to embankment project, because if you know the rivers always have flood and how to control the flood, so farmers can have a harvest. That's become crucial of effective administration. So most of maps is created for the administrative purpose. So how do you say what map are advanced and what maps so this serves the purpose of the time period of that era. So I really can't jump to the conclusion to say one is advanced than the other. They're different. Just like what the Professor Stephen Carpenter last night said, that you start to learn different cultures, because everyone's one phenomenon, there are a lot of buried messages. How do we decipher them? That's where lays the study.
The Gujanga collection was moved to the Library of
China map of the Mercator Hondius Atlas from 1606. This map shows a badly misprojected Japan and Korea as an island. The first map which showed Korea as an island in Europe was the world map by Petrus Blancius in 1594. But at the same time, other Europeans like the Italian Jesuit Matteo Ricci drew Korea as a peninsula in 1602. During the 17th century, the situation in the German-speaking countries remained largely unchanged, with one significant exception. In comparison to the 16th century, German mapmaking began to decline gradually, while the work produced in the Habsburg monarchy mainly consisted of regional maps of Austria provinces. However, one exception mainly was provided by the South Tyrol Jesuit Martino Martini, who substantially improved the depiction of East China and the Korean peninsula, and in fact served as a source for many other European cartographers. Since the last quarter of the 16th century, the Jesuits had been operating missions in China. Most missionaries had a solid scientific grounding and duly began to explore the geography of China. One of the first among them was the Italian Matteo Ricci, who designed maps of the world for the Chinese. We have seen one example yesterday. And also he adapted European maps according to information gleaned from Chinese sources. For this reason, the European view of China in the 17th and 18th centuries was almost entirely based on images originated by Jesuit missions.
Now, everyone here knows something about the Silk Routes. They began when China came together under the auspices of the First Kingdom and the development of Xi'an as the first capital of a unified China. The Xi'an then up in the northwest part of China followed the Hexi corridor between the Tibetan Plateau and the Gobi Desert for about 1,000 kilometres and then split. Now, as well as the land routes, it's easy to forget that there were very, very important sea routes. So this Silk Road really began from the Han period, about 200 years BC, right up to around 1400. But it was only open and controlled completely for 1 century, and that was the 13th century when the Mongols actually controlled the entire route. And this allowed the movement of some Westerners. We've heard of some of the priests that took this route, and of course Marco Polo, who in captivity in Genoese jail dictated his story. The maritime routes became particularly valuable in the early 1400s when a Ming admiral, Zheng He, who was an incredibly powerful person, made a number of trips, particularly to the Malacca area and probably more widely, in around about 1420. So the Silk Routes were incredibly important. The maps that we have around right up here, well into the 1600s, really didn't have a clue about where the Silk Routes were. And this is just one example, the Hondius map of 1602 of Tartary, and try as you will, you can see the Great Wall of China, but you won't find Xi'an, or I certainly can't. And while there are odd names that are vaguely relevant to some of the key spots on the Silk Routes, it makes very little geographic sense.
Asia from the 18th century. I've picked one that we have in the Maclean collection. This is Matrini's set of the continents with in addition to a world map. So my assistant very nicely created a border around it to make it a little clearer to see. And then when you juxtapose the two together, so here's that shape, and here is the inner continent. So here is Korea, very nicely. Here are our 4 rivers, 1, 2, and 3. We'll get to this in a moment. Here are your 3 rivers. Here's Vietnam. Here's the Malay Peninsula. Here's India. And what you have here is the Persian Gulf. The Gulf of Oman is the foreign water. And then the split over here would be the Black Sea. And so if you conflate this and slightly compress it, I think it's, to me, quite obvious that this shape is one that's derived from Western maps and Western cartography. So what we're looking at is a construct of, and again, we're thinking about identity. And so for a world map, you look to China has been always a major source for culture, literature, administration, all of these things as sort of the big brother. And so you look to China and this idea of the Shanghai Jing. You create a map based on that has Buddhist influence, again, a very long tradition within East Asia, including 18th century Western maps for the contour of the inner continent. And so you come up with something that is quite uniquely Korean. There is no other map like this on the planet, and as you all know, it's the sort of icon. We have it on virtually everything related to the IMCoS in Seoul, because in fact it is the most representative Korean map, distinctively. It is not East Asian, it is Korean. There are no issues about where this particular map is made.
Has a lot of interesting and historical information to provide. The people, the staff here is very, very helpful. My visit to the National Library has been very enjoyable and very learning. Thank you. 감사합니다.
A lot that as I say, I had very little idea about Korean maps before I came here, and I've learned a lot. So I'll go back to the United States with a lot more knowledge.
I must say that I think everybody that's come to the symposium has been equally impressed. So I do hope that we'll get back to see some of the collection, and I do hope that Korean maps become more exposed to the Western eye.